Bhagavani, Nirisa Nisa Bhagavani, Nisa Nisa Mani Bhagavani.
Om Sri Sai Ram. A couple of days ago, Srimati M.S.Subbulakshmi passed away in Madras at the ripe old age of 88 after ailing for some time. Through this broadcast, Radio Sai wishes to offer a tribute to this great, noble and remarkable lady. M.S., who became a legend in her own time, has often been hailed as the queen of Carnatic music. That indeed she was. But she was much more. She was, to put it simply, a wonderfully good human being representing the best of Indian womanhood. People talk of saints who sang their way into the heart of God. If ever there were such persons, then M.S. surely would be in their ranks, in the forefront, I might add. For the benefit of those who are not familiar with this extraordinary lady and the exquisite manner in which she rendered songs, breathing bhakti into every syllable and note, let me offer a brief profile. M.S. was born in the temple city of Madurai and received her first training in music from her mother. Her training was in the strict tradition of Carnatic music. Blessed with a good voice, as a young girl, M.S. sang in temples. Soon, people began to take notice of her because she had a wonderful voice. And she made her first recording at the early age of 13 or thereabouts. We used to have that record in our house. Her voice was very shrill at that time. Of course, there is no surprise in that. In those days, Tamil films were almost entirely mythological, with a generous quota of songs rendered in good classical style, Carnatic style that is, and inevitably most singers ended up in films. It's no wonder then that M.S. too acted in a few films in those days. Of these, the most famous was unquestionably Meera, shot in the mid-40s and released just as the Second World War came to an end. If I am not mistaken, that film, as indeed many films in which M.S. acted, was directed by an American named Ellis R. Dungan. Meera was first made in Tamil and then remade in Hindi. Indeed, it was the Hindi version of Meera that made M.S. into an all-India figure as early as 1948. Meera might not be a great film in technical terms or acting, but it was the film to portray bhakti, and it seemed as if God had created M.S. just to play that part. Of that there cannot be any doubt. It was M.S. all the way in that film. All the other characters were purely incidental and mere excuses for the narration of the story. By the way, there was no hero in that film. I should not forget to mention that the songs of the film Meera became instant hits and used to be hummed by one and all in South India in those days. I am told that Swami had a set of Meera records and also the only gramophone in Puttaparthi in those days. He apparently used to occasionally play these records in the old mandir. I cannot entirely vouch for this story, but this much I can confirm. Swami knew the Meera songs very well, and in fact he even quotes a particular line in some of his discourses. In a discourse given on 19 July 1996, Swami said, and I quote, "Bhakti often finds expression in singing. There are 4 kinds of devotional songs. In the first category, the attributes of God are extolled. This is Gunaganamu. In the second type, the glory of the Lord as revealed in His miracles is praised. This is Leela Ganamu. One can also sing with feeling, which is Bhava Ganamu. In the last type, the song revolves around the various names of the Lord. This is Nama Ganamu." Swami continues, "Music is melodious and pleasing to the ears. This is the reason that during Nagar Sankirtan in the morning, even people who do not know music join in the singing. Whether one is an atheist or a theist, one forgets oneself the moment one hears melodious music. Music is not only a vehicle for the description of God's glory and Leelas, but it also elevates and produces a feeling of ecstasy. Music always enthralls, and many are the bhaktas who have attained liberation through music. Music is the grand road to mukti or liberation. Music makes the devotee to forget himself or herself and get totally immersed in divinity. That's the end of quote. Please note the last sentence of the quote. I shall repeat it for your benefit. Music makes the devotee to forget himself or herself and get totally immersed in God. That's what Swami said, and that applied 100% to MS. Gandhi heard MS sing and instantly became captivated by her music. Again and again he would ask MS to sing some of his favorite bhajans, which she did with immense pleasure. Blessing her, Gandhi advised her to dedicate her music entirely to God and not participate in concerts for money. That marked a major turning point in her life. She quit films. Anyway, the films are slowly taking a different turn, totally unsuited to her traditional upbringing. Not only that, she immediately discontinued singing in standard concerts where she received a remuneration. Instead, she concentrated on concerts that were intended to raise funds for a charitable cause. Starting from the early 50s, she sang for many years to raise funds for the Kasturiba Gandhi Memorial Fund. And thanks to her talent and reputation, she raised a huge amount. From then on, she never looked back. Barring special occasion concerts, like when she was elected the president of the Music Academy one year, a sign of high recognition by hard-boiled musicians and critics, MS sang almost exclusively to spread the glory of God and to raise funds for temples and charitable organizations. For example, she recorded the Venkateswara Suprabhadam, and all the royalty due to her on it go in perpetuity to the Tirupati Devasthanam, and so on it goes. MS was the uncrowned monarch of Carnatic music. There might have been others better in certain aspects of technical virtuosity, but when it came to voice, depth of rendering, and packing the song with bhava or heartfelt feeling, MS was unquestionably in a class by herself. This was tacitly accepted in the music world, and everyone, including the sternest of critics, agreed that where voice was concerned, she was unique, like Shakespeare is in literature. While one can go into raptures about the musical excellence of MS, I would prefer to focus on something which only receives passing mention by others. That is, her simplicity and nobility. She was not merely simple and absolutely humble, but she was also childlike and innocent. I can assure you that this was not a put-on. She led a full family life as enjoined in the Shastras, representing the best of Indian womanhood. To put it differently, she personified all that Swami says about Indian womanhood in Dharma Vahini. There cannot be any dispute about that. There is an important spiritual point here about the life of MS that almost everyone seems to have missed. You see, she provided a brilliant example of Karma Yoga in action. Let us for a moment go back to the Gita. What did Krishna tell Arjuna? In essence, what the Blessed Lord said was, Arjuna, destiny made you take birth as a warrior, and that is the duty you have to perform. Right now, when Dharma has to be defended, instead of fighting on the side of Dharma, you are trying to talk like a sannyasi in order to avoid fighting. This is wrong. That's what Krishna said in a sense to Arjuna. Swami says the same thing. Like what you are doing instead of trying to do what you like. Quite naturally and spontaneously, and I am sure unconsciously also, MS led the full life of a married woman, serving her husband constantly. Did she become a non-entity as a result of that? Far from it. Quietly and without any fuss, she used her music to reach out to the masses and evoke feelings of bhakti in them in various ways. All this while she was discharging her ordained duty. Not only that, throughout her life, she taught an object lesson on humility. Few won as many honors as she did, but how lightly she wore them. Sadly, even in the world of classical music, there is quite a lot of politics. But MS scrupulously kept away from it all. She had no friends or foes, and to her all were alike in the Gita sense. She saw only good in all. In fact, she went out of the way to invite all great Vidwans to her residence and honored them sumptuously. No wonder all the prominent musicians attended her funeral. In fact, the President Dr. Abdul Kalam, known to be a great admirer of MS for years, came specially to attend the state funeral given to MS. I should here mention that MS got all the honors one could think of, including the Magsaysay Award and the highest honor of that India confers on civilians, the Bharat Ratna, meaning literally the gem of India. While many such Bharat Ratna conferment have been criticized, in the case of MS there was absolutely no murmur, and there is no surprise in that. By the way, Dr. Kalam called on MS while she was ailing, and when he came for the funeral, he dedicated to her a special poem he had composed in her honor. MS took her music seriously and never ceased to practice. She was very good at Veena, but this was hardly known to the public because she never played the Veena in public except perhaps once many years ago. I must now say something about MS and Bhakti because that really was what her music was all about. Reduced to essentials, Bhakti is an expression of love for God. There are, of course, many ways of showing Bhakti, and as we all know, Swami often draws our attention to the 9 paths of Bhakti that are available to the devotee. But he has also told us that one sweet way of practicing Bhakti is to pour our heart out to Him in song. Unfortunately, not all of us are blessed with a good voice, but then those who are would do well to dedicate that voice to God and His service rather than sell it in the marketplace. In ancient times, musical saints simply ignored everything around them and immersed themselves in music. In the process, they actually created music. The greatest example of that where Carnatic music is concerned is of course Saint Tyagaraja, who lived roughly 200 years ago. Swami, who often makes a reference to Tyagaraja and his music, and has told us many times how Tyagaraja spent almost all his time singing about Rama and for Rama, his favorite deity. In the process, Tyagaraja created extraordinary and path-breaking musical compositions. It is to the great credit of MS that she used her divine voice to make Tyagaraja's composition come alive in the 20th century. When others sang Tyagaraja's compositions, one admired the musical genius of the composer. But when MS sang those very same songs, the listener wept or exulted as Tyagaraja did when he sang for Rama. MS alone could evoke those feelings because once she started singing, she would just close her eyes and transport herself into an altogether different world, that of Bhakti. That was what really drew even ordinary people to her music. One does not have to know Carnatic music, but everyone can respond to the song of the heart, and that precisely is what she offered. It is no surprise that many years ago she was invited to sing at the prestigious Edinburgh Music Festival. This inviting her was a revolutionary move on the part of the organizers of the festival. MS went there and promptly swept the audience off its feet. The audience did not know a thing about Carnatic music, but they could not fail to see musical genius and excellence in her. It was the same story when she sang before the United Nations in New York. There they were, delegates and representatives from over 100 countries in the world. The huge hall was jam-packed. It was a very special concert, and MS had two special songs, one in English, composed specially for the occasion by Rajaji at the instance of Field Marshal Cariappa, the first Indian to hold the post of the Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army. Handel Manuel of Madras, very well known in Madras on account of his connection with All India Radio, set the song to music. The other special song that MS sung was one composed by the Paramacharya of Kanchi, and this was in Sanskrit. The music for this was, I believe, set by Masant Desai. Both songs reflected Indian ethos, the message of oneness of God, the need for a ceiling on desires, a salutation to Mother Earth who provides us with everything, and a prayer for peace and goodwill in humanity. At the end of the concert, MS got a standing ovation that seemed to go on and on and on. She was just not used to that sort of thing. By the way, the text of both these songs would be published in Heart to Heart, along with many photos. You might look out for that article in one of the forthcoming issues of Heart to Heart. In later years, MS did a lot to record famous slokas, etc. And it is no exaggeration to say that it is these recordings that have made many people, young and old, to take to the recitation of Venkateswara Suprabhadam, Vishnu Sahasranamam, Hanuman Chalisa, and so on and so on. By the way, her recording of Vishnu Sahasranamam is the most sold recording in human history. Other recordings might have temporarily made it to the top of the charts, as they say in America, but Vishnu Sahasranamam, being divine, enjoys continued and undiminished popularity. Bhishmacharya might have given that treasure, but it was MS who really distributed it to the masses. And now a few words about MS and Swami. For decades, MS and her husband were, like many in Madras, devout followers of the Paramacharya of Kanchi. One fine day, and I have this on good authority, Paramacharya asked MS to go to Puttaparthi. MS was apparently puzzled by this command and wanted to know why she should go to Puttaparthi when she already had a guru. The Paramacharya simply said, "Go there and you will find out the reason." Incidentally, it's interesting that Ramana Maharishi also once sent some of his disciples to Puttaparthi in this very same fashion. So, MS came to Puttaparthi, and instantly she knew why she had been asked to come here. Thereafter, she became a regular visitor and sang many times in the divine presence. I remember one such occasion. It was the 70th birthday of Swami, and MS was giving a concert in the Purnachandra auditorium, of course, before Swami. I could not get into that auditorium. There was so much rush. So I withdrew into the Sai Kulwant hall, where fortunately one could hear the concert via the public address system. I still recall her song O Rangasai, composed by Tyagaraja in honor of Lord Ranganatha, who gives darshan in Srirangam. It's a wonderful song in the great Carnatic Raga Kambodi, and MS sang it with feeling as only she could. And in a most touching move, she at one point made Rangasai into Sathya Sai, and my God, what an electrifying effect that had. Swami invariably showed much love to MS. One year during Ladies' Day, Swami asked her to speak. She said, "Swami, I do not know how to speak. I once could sing, but now even that I am not able to do. How can I speak, Swami?" But Swami would not take no for an answer. He went down to where she was sitting and helped her to walk up a few steps to the porch in Sai Kulwant hall and took her to the podium. MS then, bowing to the divine command, said, "Swami, as I just said, I do not know how to make speeches. But if anyone asks me, 'Are you father?' I will say, 'You certainly are father.' If they ask me, 'Are you mother?' I will assert that you are indeed mother." And in this manner she spoke just a few sentences, straight from the heart. Later, of course, many other ladies made speeches. That evening, when Swami was going around and giving darshan in Purnachandra hall before a cultural program, he told a group of ladies, Today, so many people made speeches, but the speech of MS alone stood out. It came straight from the heart. All others were artificial. That says everything, does it not? I had the good fortune to come into personal contact with MS on two occasions. The first was in 1968, and the second was around 1994 here in Puttaparthi. In those days, MS used to come here for every birthday celebrations. On account of her diet restrictions, Mrs. Srinivasan, the wife of her physics professor at that time, used to specially cook food for MS and her family and have it sent over throughout their stay. And just before leaving, MS would invariably pay a visit to Professor Srinivasan's flat in the staff quarters on Samadhi Road. That year, my wife and I were invited to join for lunch. We went, and the experience I had was a revelation. MS moved just like a simple lady of any ordinary middle-class household. She was requested to sing, and she turned to her husband asking him, "What should I sing?" She then asked Professor Srinivasan's daughters to sing, and as they did, she corrected them many times. In the end, she said, "My dears, when you sing, the sound must come from the navi, not from the lips or the throat." This is a very important advice and remark, and I wish to say a few words about it. Navi means navel, and according to Hindu mythology, Brahma, the creator, resides in a lotus that emerges from the navel of Vishnu. Brahma is not only to be looked upon as the agency for the creation of the material objects in the physical universe, but he is also associated with sound. In practical terms, when someone says the sound must come from Navi, it means that the diaphragm, which is below the lungs, must push the air out forcefully in producing the sound. Then alone would the sound be rich in tonal quality, besides, of course, being loud. To put it differently, both musicians and those who chant the Vedas are always urged to produce sound with full force for achieving grandeur and sonorous tonal quality. This empirical formula has independently been discovered the world over, and it is no surprise that opera singers in the West also do precisely the same thing, though not in obedience to a spiritual injunction. One last MS story that would appeal to devotees. Warden Narasimhamurthy of Vrindavan is busy preparing the next volume of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, which is meant to be released next year at the time of the 80th birthday. In this connection, he has been talking to many old-timers, and one of them was MS. Apparently, at the end of his interview with MS, Narasimhamurthy asked, "Amma, do you have any special prayer for Bhagwan?" MS smiled and replied, "Where is the question of prayer? Even before we start to pray, Swami is giving me everything that I could want and even more." What a wonderful reply. It is really not possible to praise MS enough. However, there is no need to. Her work does it all for her, and it does not require people like me who do not know even the ABC of music to offer encomiums. What I am trying to do, perhaps most feebly, is to express Radio Sai's humble tribute. I take this opportunity to inform listeners that with the help of devotees in Chennai, formerly Madras, Radio Sai has been able to obtain nearly 50 CDs representing hours and hours of the music of MS covering many decades. Our collection includes recording of the famous UN concert. Radio Sai has sought permission to broadcast these precious recordings from time to time, and the clearance is awaited. I am told it would be coming soon. Meanwhile, I take the liberty of closing this talk by playing for you MS's famous rendering of Bhajagovindam. Adi Shankara gave this treasure over 1500 years ago. For centuries, the Bhajagovindam lay with scholars. MS it was who gave it to the masses, and in a wonderful musical form. I would go so far as to say that if MS had left just this one song for humanity, it would have been a Himalayan gift. Instead, she has given us 1,000,000 Himalayas. Now that this noble soul has merged into Swami, I am sure she would be singing for him always. Jai Sai Ram.
स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते। सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले सम्प्राप्ते सन्निहिते काले नहि नहि रक्षति दुःखकरणे नहि नहि रक्षति दुःखकरणे। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते। मूढजहि धनागमतृष्णा मूढजहि धनागमतृष्णा कुरु सद्बुद्धिं मनसि वितृष्णा कुरु सद्बुद्धिं मनसि वितृष्णा। यल्लभसे निज कर्मोपातं यल्लभसे निज कर्मोपातं वित्तं तेन विनोदय चित्तं। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते। यावत्वितोपार्जनशक्तः तावत् निज परिवारो रतः यावत्वितोपार्जनशक्तः तावत् निज परिवारो रतः पश्चाज्जीवति जर्जरदेहे पश्चाज्जीवति जर्जरदेहे वार्तां कोऽपि न पृच्छति गेहे वार्तां कोऽपि न पृच्छति गेहे। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते। मा कुरु धनजन यौवनगर्वं हरति निमेषात् काल सर्वं मा कुरु धनजन यौवनगर्वं हरति निमेषात् काल सर्वं मायामयमिदम् अखिलं हित्वा मायामयमिदम् अखिलं हित्वा ब्रह्मपदं त्वं प्रविश विदित्वा ब्रह्मपदं त्वं प्रविश विदित्वा। भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते। सुरमन्दिरतरु मूलनिवासः शय्याभूतलम् अजिनं वासः सुरमन्दिरतरु मूलनिवासः शय्याभूतलम् अजिनं वासः सर्व भागः भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते भगवद्गीता किञ्चिदधीता भगवद्गीता किञ्चिदधीता गङ्गाजललव कणिका पीता भगवद्गीता किञ्चिदधीता गङ्गाजललव कणिका पीता सकृदपि येन मुरारी सकृदपि येन मुरारी समर्च सकृदपि येन मुरारी समर्च क्रियते तस्य यमेन न चर्चा क्रियते तस्य यमेन न चर्चा भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि मरणं पुनरपि जननं पुनरपि मरणं पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनं पुनरपि जननी जठरे शयनं इह संसारे बहु दुस्तारे इह संसारे बहु दुस्तारे कृपया पारे पाहि मुरारे कृपया पारे पाहि मुरारे भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते गेयं गीता नाम सहस्रं ध्येयं श्रीपति रूपमजस्रं गेयं गीता नाम सहस्रं ध्येयं श्रीपति रूपमजस्रं नेयं सज्जन संगे चित्तं नेयं सज्जन संगे चित्तं देयं दीनजनाय च वीतं देयं दीनजनाय च वीतं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते अर्थमनर्थं भावय नित्यं नास्ति तत् सुखलेश सत्यम् अर्थमनर्थं भावय नित्यं नास्ति तत् सुखलेश सत्यं पुत्रादपि धनभाजं भीतिः पुत्रादपि धनभाजं भीतिः सर्वत्रैषा विहिता रीतिः सर्वत्रैषा विहिता रीतिः भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते गुरुचरणाम्बुज निर्भर भक्तः संसार रचिराद्भवमुक्तः गुरुचरणाम्बुज निर्भर भक्तः संसार रचिराद्भवमुक्तः सेन्द्रियमानस नियमादे हृदयस्थं देवं रक्षसे निज हृदयस्थं देवं भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं गोविन्दं भज मूढमते भज गोविन्दं भज गोविन्दं